Texas Real Estate Show, and here we are. And this morning we've got a special guest. His name is Chris Woolridge. Good morning, Chris. How you doing, buddy?
Very good.
You had a good week?
Oh,
Are you living the dream?
just keeps getting bigger every day.
And today what we're actually going to talk about is how you should take control of your finances and basically on what you should do to develop a financial planning checklist. And I'm just going to say quickly what them points are. First of all is create a budget for yourself and your family, build an emergency fund, manage your debt, outline your financial goals, put your family first, plan now for retirement, review your key financial information annually. And then we're going to go into them with a little bit depth as we go along. So, Chris, if you'd like to sort of start this on how you think we should, go about this. So, go through your list and sort of explain it to us what we suggest. Because let's just sort of clarify the situation. You get all this information from individual clients. Yeah. We've done this, correct?
We have.
You've done it,
we have.
And then basically we get it all together, then you develop a plan.
Absolutely. And so the motto of the company that I'm with, Western and Southern Financial Group, is to meet clients where they're at. And specifically, we focus on middle market, meaning that we're not out chasing the top 1, 5, 10% of income earners. We're really hoping to meet people where they're at and grow with them. And so oftentimes when we're meeting with clients, there's a preliminary step of getting to know them and them getting to know us. And what we found is that putting a plan of action in front of clients as we begin to have our meetings around different components of their financial life, it really puts them at ease. And the second benefit of that is that it allows them to look at the list that you mentioned just a few minutes ago and understand where are they coming in to the conversation.
Okay, that sounds like a good approach, to be perfectly honest, with the whole thing. How could you add to that? Is there anything else that you'd like to sort of, add to that?
Well, many of our clients are real estate agents and brokers, and that comes to me or by me very naturally, in that I used to be an agent and broker myself, and so this is what I'll term as a natural market. And understanding that many agents and brokers, because of the irregularity of commission cycles, really don't have financial planning as something that's top of mind. They're looking to close the transaction that they're in at the moment, and then where do I go get the next one? And it becomes this cycle, of I call the chase, as opposed to something that's a little bit more methodical or rhythmic when we work with clients that maybe have a 9-to-5 job and have an opportunity to invest in a 401k. So does that answer your question?
Absolutely. So what would you say is the first step to create a budget for yourself and your family?
So creating a budget is all about understanding what's coming in and what's going out in any capacity. And so coming in, what do I mean? I mean income. What are you making? What's contributing to your expenses on a monthly basis? And then what's going out is everything that you spend your money on. So maybe it's housing, maybe it's car, maybe it's smaller items but just important like a cell phone, maybe it's groceries, maybe you have a relative that lives in the house with you and you have to budget some funds that come in each month to provide for that person as well.
Okay. And then moving on, let's talk about emergency fund, because I know it's a very, very high percentage that people do not have an emergency fund.
So what we have found is that about 89% of American households do not have a written financial plan. And that includes the exercise of identifying what your budget is, as well as the need for an emergency fund. And so, step two in this process, and I'm not asking anybody to make any drastic changes when they create a budget. We're simply just putting ideas down on a piece of paper and assigning them to a category. Once we've got our hands wrapped around what's coming in and then what's going out, we can begin to start using that as a planning tool. And one of the highest priority items on that list of tools and creating those tools is the emergency fund. If we can begin to break a cycle or introduce a measure of calm into the conversation by allowing somebody to begin this emergency fund creation whenever they have a car problem, whenever they have an immediate small need for some type of a financial contribution, they've got it, and it doesn't disrupt the rest of their life, so to speak. And then as we go forward, we begin to understand, okay, this is a good number to have in my emergency fund, because on average over the course of a year, this is about what I'm spending on taking care of things that just sort of pop up, like car problems, or maybe you've got an issue like I did last summer where I had to have some air conditioner work. We had a very hot summer here in Texas, lots of stress on our system. System is a little bit older, and we had to have some work on it. If I didn't have an emergency fund put in place,
then you get in the credit cards.
well, then I'm hitting the credit cards, and then we're starting to get into this cycle of high interest debt, and just no good. So we're beginning to take steps to play defense.
Yeah, and when you're talking about an emergency fund, are you looking at like 3 months of expenses, 6 months of expenses, or what? Is everybody different?
So initially, it's a number. It's a number that you can come up with, that you can build to, that gives you an immediate sense of comfort. Maybe it's 500, maybe it's 1,000, maybe it's more than that. And then as you go forward in time, what we like to do is say, okay, let's say that, and we're in a volatile market right now, and everybody knows somebody that has come up against employment issues, right? And so let's say that maybe we can plan for having 6 months worth of income set back in the event that you lose a job, there's job interruption. And then you get that in place, you measure, is it too much, is it not enough, and you make an adjustment. So to your last comment, yes, it's very personal to everybody.
Okay. All right. I was going to ask you another question on that emergency fund. So it varies with different people.
It does.
It varies with different people on what their comfort level is. With that emergency fund, it also depends on, obviously an emergency fund, you want instant access to it. It's got to be
very liquid.
It's got to be something that's very liquid. So is there anything in particular that you would suggest, or is that down to the individual and their risk level? Like, would it be a high yield savings account, a money market account? Would it be mutual funds? Would it be, is there anything? Remember, I'm not the financial expert here.
You're not?
No, definitely not.
So liquidity, anything that you can use as an instrument to take care of your funds safely and provide you with immediate access. So let's define immediate as 24 hours. Because anytime somebody asks you for something, or anytime you have, an emergency, 24 hours is usually plenty of time to be able to make the payments for it. And so you mentioned a couple of things that we prescribe, higher yield savings accounts that you can just go and get at your bank right now. Rates there, 4.5%, pretty common with our higher interest rate environment right now. If you want to try to do better than that, maybe you want to get into a money market account, but what you don't want to do is get into a situation where you are locking your funds up and disabling access to the funds for a long period of time. And this is, maybe it's a month, maybe it's 3 months, 6 months, and commonly you'll see that in CDs,
like the CDs, right?
Certificate of deposits.
Gotcha.
And then beyond that, going into the market and using what you said, mutual funds. And so larger amounts of money, where you know that you're maybe able to stay invested in the accounts and the funds, even if you were to dip into them for emergency reasons. Yeah, I can see that, and I think that's something that you grow into, maybe rather than starting there first.
Okay. Now let's move on to the thing that I have struggled with over the years. It's called managing your debt. Because running a company, what you're doing is obviously you're paying debts, which are your company debts. And there is a rule that some people have in business, but I've never been able to manage it, which is you pay yourself first before your business. But it's very difficult to do that. I find that a challenge because at the end of the day, being a broker, I want my agents to be happy. I want good, positive environment in the office. That way we can sell more houses and we all feel good about ourselves and what we do.
Sure.
And they live with a passion. So, somebody calls me up with the best and the brightest lead generation tool. Have a guess who's there? I'm there. And I've been burnt. Last year I was burnt for $35,000 for one lead generation tool, which wasn't a Century 21 tool. But I was, definitely.
Those tools.
So it's difficult to do from a business level and a personal level. I've gone through the cars, I've gone through the Mercedes and the Rolls Royces and everything else, because when the office was doing better, and now here I am later on in life, starting again. So give us some good guidelines for managing your debt.
So I'm going to jump up back to the top of the list, create a budget. And having a budget, it's kind of like wading into a swimming pool. You're not going to jump in that cold water all at once and, experience that shock. You want to kind of work yourself into it. So step one, budget. Step two, emergency fund. Well, why? Because as you begin to see what you're spending your money on, what you want to focus on are the trouble spots. And so those incremental, and we all have them. If we've got kids, if we've got parents maybe that live with us and are taking care of us, if we own cars or houses, we know that we're going to have a leaky roof every once in a while. We know that we're going to have to take one of those kids to the doctor. We know that there's going to be a car problem sooner or later. And so setting aside a little bit of money to give yourself some breathing room in those instances. And then the next logical step in this is you look at that list of things that are coming in and things that are going out. Those outgoing elements tend to be debts, right? Or debts are at least included in them. And then you can begin to arrange those debts. And this is where a popular radio show host presented me with an idea many years ago, and it's called the debt snowball. And so arranging your debts in order of lowest or least to most or highest simply you haven't done anything, you haven't allocated any funds any differently in the process. You've simply just identified, these are the debts that I owe less money on, and these are the debts that I owe more money. And so, why is that important? Well, because if you're able to begin to attack those smaller debts and then roll those funds into the next one, and so on and so on, as you're moving up the list, you're retiring debt, and you're starting to get into the bigger, larger, more important elements of your budget. And then as you begin to retire those larger ones, you begin to free up cash. And all of a sudden you've got positive cash flow now in your budget that you can begin maybe to go back, as we talked about a few minutes ago, where now it's not just about $500 or $1,000 in your emergency fund, but now you're starting to, maybe you've got 1 month of income, maybe you've got 2, maybe you've got 6, maybe you've got a year now, whatever's important to you. And it's through that process of retiring debt and freeing up cash to be able to apply in other places where you assign it in your budget. That's how you manage it.
And I think the other overlapping point is, number 4, where you've got outline your financial goals. Well, that's basically in your budget as well.
It is, and you don't have to do it all at once. This can be, if you were just like jumping in that cold water, it can be an extremely overwhelming process. But if you methodically approach it and pay attention to it every day and spread out a little bit more, it's really surprising how quickly you can begin to make some substantial gains in these areas. And I sit here and I talk to you, and it sounds like I've got a lot of confidence, and I do. And why? Because I've gone through this process myself. Many, many years ago, as a young guy, getting into business, getting in over my head, exiting the business and having a lot of debt, I had to figure out a way out. And coming across the radio program that I did with the debt snowball, it allowed me to visualize my problem, and it allowed me to have a methodical and logical approach to retiring debt that I was in charge of, that I could go at my pace, that if I needed to divert funds, for whatever reason, 1 month and get back on track the next month, I was able to do that, and it proved to be very effective for me.
And then, of course, number 5, which is put your family first.
It is, and if you think about it, if you've got a family, or that you're a parent and you have kids, or if you're part of a family, everybody in your circle of influence, real estate talks a lot about sphere of influence, right? Everybody that you touch, everybody that you have the ability to influence in some way or another benefits when you're in a better financial position. You're able to, if nothing else, just provide them with an example of the good things that happen to people who take the time to manage their finances. Right. And then maybe charitable giving is something that is important to you. Well, here's a way to create that as a line item in your budget, and here's a way to create the element in your budget in terms of the financial contribution.
Right. Good point. And then another point that I really failed on was plan now for retirement. I started saving for retirement in my 20s, but as I went through life, first of all, I pulled money out to buy my first house, the down payment. Then when I got over here to start my first business, which is my first real estate brokerage, I pulled money out of that again. So by the time, I get into my sort of 55, 58, all of a sudden it's drastically reduced, and I lost all the benefits of, you know, compounding that money.
Certainly.
You know, so it's been very nice. So basically, you know, I'm at the point where, yes, I've got my rental properties, so I've got some rental income from that, and then, you know, we're looking at getting partnerships in the company, or even, you know, selling my company. But basically, you know, it's sort of starting the retirement and putting that retirement plan together.
It is, and
But it's never too late to start, is it?
right. So your first points are you started early. Those that start early and stay with it, really, I think, are surprised by the amount of financial resources that they can create for themselves. And so you think about it, you've got your budget, you know where your income is, you know where it's flowing out. You've got emergencies under control with an appropriate amount of funding. You've managed your debt to the point that if you're made the decision to take on debt, it's strategic. And you know, a lot of times folks in real estate that have done real estate investment will take on debt, and maybe the debt is taken on temporarily, and we'll use the example of maybe flipping a house or doing some kind of rehab where you go in and there'll be debt up front, but then as the project is completed, the sale takes place, the debt is retired. You know, there's this cycle of business activity, right? You take the profits, you decide what you're going to do with them. Many successful real estate entrepreneurs will set aside a portion of those profits and create their own bank, right? And so this is all part of their plan that they've outlined in their financial goals. That's that step number 4, family first. Now we've just talked about all the benefits that you create, and then finally retirement. You know, at some point we all age, right? And we all begin to at least look for the opportunity to slow down a little bit. And so when that happens, we've got opportunities, if we've created those for ourselves. The federal government has also created an opportunity for us. It's called Social Security. Everybody knows that Social Security is up in the air right now, but there's still something. And I work with clients every day who are at the age where they can begin to take Social Security benefits, and they do. And it's part of their financial plan. If that's all that you've got, then you're going to have a gap, right? And you're going to have debt, or you're going to have expenses, and you're going to have to figure out a way to close that gap. Typically, that is a part-time job. And we've all walked into the Walmarts and the grocery stores and other places where we've seen elderly Americans, you know, performing tasks.
To Walmart.
Right, that are valuable, but they're part-time, and it's so that they can make living expenses.
Right. Which is sad to see, which is, from my point of view.
And that continuum of preparedness for retirement is really, it's an opportunity that, you said it a minute ago, you can start when you're young, or you can start at any point in your life.
Yeah, like recently, I started like a savings fund, correct?
Yes.
For my 2 kids.
Right.
Which basically they can continue. So when I pass, they can basically continue it if they want to.
Yes, and the way that we set the account up is that it's your account. And so they will be the beneficiaries of the account, you know, when that time comes.
Mm-hmm.
The investments that we selected were very liquid. Why? Well, if you remember, we went through a conversation where we began to identify some things that were important to you from an access perspective. You're not interested in super high risk, high return investments. You work hard for your money. You want to be able to put it away, and you want to have a high level of confidence that when you go to get it, it's going to be there.
Right.
And so moderate to conservative level risk investments, you can find those all day long.
Well, the plan for that was the fact that because of the compound interest, you know, I've got a kid that's 27, Jack's 27, and Jill's 23.
Mm-hmm.
That the idea is that if they start now and then they've got it all the way through, they can keep it if they want all the way through.
And there's really no
like
restrictions.
They can continue it themselves if they want to.
And as they, to your point, as they begin to take possession of those funds, then they've got a decision to make, you know, or are we
Do
going
they
to go out
continue it, or do
and buy a car, or use it as a down payment on
I
a
hope not.
house, or
a house? Yes, but
maybe start a college fund for
Right.
kids, or, you know, convert it into something that they can begin to invest in for, you know, long-term opportunities like retirement.
Right, and then the part that I thought was pretty interesting was when you said, review your key financial information annually, review it every year.
And so I'm gonna take that a couple of steps further. I always give my clients a call at the end of every quarter. As we all know, right now, we're in an election year. And so I believe in America and around the world, as we still are dealing with high interest rates, inflation, some political turmoil going on in different spots, our economy is more and more global every day. I want to give people the opportunity and really to get away from this idea of what we call in finance is set it and forget it, meaning that you're participating, you've established a retirement account or an investment account, and you're on a rhythm, you're contributing to it on a regular basis, but you're not really going back and looking at it too much, or you may get a statement and then, okay, you'll worry about this later. I think that this is a great opportunity to educate people, get them to understand how the funds work, and also see if we might be able to exploit any of the benefits of the investment strategy that we've put on the table, or do we need to make any changes to it? You know, or is performance not what we're expecting? You know, we don't want these knee-jerk reactions, but you know, given an appropriate amount of time, does it make sense to make some changes?
Yeah. Strategy.
Strategy, exactly.
That's what it boils down to.
Right.
Before we wrap up, is there anything else that you want to sort of add to the equation?
You know, we
just good advice for people that are maybe starting out.
We try to have conversations and introduce the idea of estate planning. And so estate planning is really just looking at what you have, what you're in control of financially, and beginning to do what? Create the budget, or create the structure whereby it's being handled efficiently. Efficiently from an investment standpoint, and efficiently from a tax management standpoint as well. And understanding, you know, how are our assets being taxed? Are they taxed today? Are they taxed down the road? Or are they never taxed in the event of, or in the case of some life insurance and maybe things like Roth IRAs? So these kinds of conversations are first introduced in an educational way, so that we can begin to establish an idea of comprehension, a comprehensive plan, and then we understand everybody comes to us with something, right? You may have a small savings account, you may have a large brokerage account, you may have a lot of insurance, but not much in retirement savings. And so if we can begin to understand what you have, then we can begin to balance or prescribe balance and the activities around balance to get your portfolio up to a point where it can weather certain financial storms.
Gotcha. Do you have any questions there, Kay?
Yes, so I actually had a question. This is a great, roadmap, but one thing that I wanted to know is how would you recommend somebody start? Like if there's like, because people say like $5 a day just to get you started, how would you recommend somebody get started saving?
Don't buy that Starbucks coffee every day.
Exactly, things like that. So how would you recommend that,
I think, and I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but sitting down, with somebody like me, or there are lots of us out there, and having a conversation around getting started. Understanding that there is a start to this process really begins to establish the logic of the process. And then next in that logical process is, well, do you have a budget? Well, sure. Here, I have it on my phone. I've got Google Docs, and here's my spreadsheet. I can email this to you. Or, no, this is something that I've never really sat down and done. I know that I need to do it. It's important, but it's not anything that I've contributed any time to. And then once myself as a financial professional gets a sense of where you are at as an investor, whether you're just getting started. I just had a conversation with someone from your office, Stephen, on Friday, who is remarkably prepared for what they want to do in retirement. And in those instances, when I'm talking to somebody and they're explaining to me their circumstances, I have a piece of paper and a pen, and I can't write fast enough because they know things so well. And then there are lots of people that are in the middle of that. So I don't think it's so much around a number, Kay, as much as it is the realization that, it's time. It's time to get started.
If I had to start again, Kay, do you know what I would honestly do when I came off the Olympic circuit in my 20s? All right, because it was what people don't understand. When you come off the Olympic circuit, you're living in the best hotels, you're living the high life, and all of a sudden you come off the Olympic circuit and you're on the floor.
I didn't know that you were an Olympian.
Yeah, and then quite honestly, I would have, if I had the discipline, would have become a minimalist. Well, because the more you can put into that process, I think at that age, with compounding your money, the easier I think it is as you get along, the track.
Yeah.
And I know somebody who earned nowhere near the money that I have through my life, that now they are more set for their retirement, just because they started off putting very, very, small amounts in. We're very good friends. I mean, we do go out for, a drink from time to time, or a glass of wine. And, he's very, very well prepared for, his retirement.
That's usually where I use the D word.
Not drunk?
Discipline.
Oh.
Like, it's the D word. I was like, die? Like, what is it?
Discipline. So, and sitting down, reaching out, accepting a phone call, setting the appointment, and recognizing the high importance of that budget creation is where all of this gets started.
Yeah, I agree. Anyway, any other questions, Kay?
Nope.
We're going to round up the Texas Real Estate Show today. So we'd like to thank Chris. As you can tell we've got a bit of diverse weather out there. We'd like to thank Chris. Thanks for coming in, Chris. We appreciate you from Western and Southern Live. I want to thank you for coming in. If you want to contact Chris, you can contact him on 281-661-3401. Or you can contact him on his cell phone number, which is 832-623-4268. I will tell you that somebody's trying to tell us something, that we need to be a little bit more
The weather's
disciplined.
yeah, the weather's trying to tell us to
And
get
weather
out of
outside, we've
here.
got some thunderstorms going outside. So anyway, well, thank you, Chris, for coming in.
My pleasure. Thank
He
you.
filled in at sort of short notice because we thought we had somebody else coming, so we want to thank you for that.
Very well.
Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate your time. And here we are again. So thanks again. See you same time, 11 o'clock, Texas Real Estate Show next week. Thanks so much.